Call the meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth meeting and possibly our last meeting of the House Standing Committee on Economic Development and Workforce Investment. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. Please make sure to silence your cell phones, members and the audience. If you are interested in testifying, please make sure that you have signed in on the sign-in sheet. And as a reminder, no signs are permitted in the committee rooms. And if any member has a question or a comment while we're presenting, make sure to let Janine or Sasha know. Members, we are under a 1 hour hard stop, so just keep that in mind. There is a meeting in here and in 1 hour exactly. Does any member seek recognition to recognize anybody in the audience? Okay, seeing none, Sasha, call the roll.
Representative Bowling.
Here.
Representative Callaway.
Here.
Representative Duval.
Here.
Representative Elliott. Representative Gentry.
Here.
Representative Griffey. Representative Grossel. Representative Jackson. Representative King.
Present.
Representative Kulkarni. Representative Lawrence. Representative Lehman.
Here.
Representative Lockett.
Here.
Representative Payne. Representative Sharp.
Present.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Present.
Representative Truitt.
Here.
Vice Chair Huff.
Here.
Chair Branscombe.
Here. We do have a quorum and are duly constituted to do business. First item on the agenda, Senate Bill 1, an act relating to the film industry. If y'all could come to the table. And if you could, please, we very aware who you all are, but if you could, just state your name for the record and your guest.
Yes, Philip Wheeler, State Senator, 31st District.
Robert Stivers, State Senator from the 25th District.
Mary Kay Poe, President, Unbridled Films.
All right, welcome. And members, we do have a committee sub on this bill. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Committee sub is adopted. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to address two small changes in the sub, one was to put a salary cap on the Kentucky Executive Director of the Kentucky Film Office, as well as to change a small date correction. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 1 seeks to take the film industry in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to the next level. As many of you all know, we have actually had some of the most generous film tax credits in the United States on the books for several years now. But unfortunately, these film tax credits are being underutilized. Based on examples from other states, notably Georgia and to some degree New Mexico, we have seen what type of economic development potential that film and the movie industry can have for a small rural state like Kentucky. Georgia has developed their film industry into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Famous shows like The Walking Dead that many of us watched or other types of movies have been filmed in Georgia. And not only do you have the direct economic impact of the production itself, film tourism is becoming a major draw to states where these types of productions have been filmed. Here in Kentucky, with our natural landscape, our friendly people, and endless potential, I think that we can take Kentucky film production to the next level. There's no reason why films like The Hatfield and McCoys, which tells a infamous Eastern Kentucky story about a feud between two families, should be filmed in Romania. There's no reason that a series like Justified, that takes place in Harlan County and Lexington, needs to be filmed in suburban California. These types of productions can and should take place right here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky if we set up the appropriate infrastructure. What Senate Bill 1 does is it establishes the Kentucky Film Office. That film office will have certain duties, and most importantly, it will basically create a website and the infrastructure necessary to attract these types of feature films to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In addition, there will be a Kentucky Film Leadership Council made up of people in the industry, folks from the Economic Development Cabinet, people that know how to bring the film industry and make it successful in this Commonwealth. Ladies and gentlemen, Kentucky stands at a precipice here we are really seeing economic development project after economic development project succeed here in Kentucky. This is merely the next step. In this step, some people have argued this only applies to big cities. I would disagree. In my own home district, the mayor of Louisa, Kentucky, Harold Sloan, and his family have produced a feature film that will soon be on Netflix, Ghost of the Big Sandy, that tells a story that takes place right in Louisa, Kentucky. As we've mentioned, Justified, Harlan County, Hatfield-McCoy's, Pike County, Kentucky. Fire Down Below was filmed in Hazard, Kentucky. There are places that this bill will have that will have an application far beyond Louisville and Lexington. But if it helps Louisville and Lexington too, great. When one area of the Commonwealth of Kentucky succeeds, we all succeed. And this bill has application on a statewide basis. So with that being said, I would ask you that you would support this bill. I really feel that it will be a tool for economic development across the Commonwealth, and I thank you for the privilege of presenting here today.
Motion on bill.
Representative Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question for you, and it may show my ignorance, so I apologize if it does. A lot of this, to me, looks as if it could be handled just within the Economic Development Cabinet without forming a separate board. Could you speak to that, please?
Mr. Chair, if I can, I've worked on this for a couple of years, and one of the things, and I want to acknowledge Secretary Knoll and Katie Smith, the Deputy Secretary, when I was talking to them about this, and there's been filming in 80 plus counties under the current scenario. But Secretary Knoll and talking to Katie, they said there's a different type of universe for which you deal in when you start talking about hard manufacturing and recruiting and incentives there versus the film industry, which is different. And I would use Sundance as an example, the Sundance Film Festival. Secretary Knoll said, we really don't have that type of mindset and network within our cabinet, but give us a tool, then we will be able to go to a different level, as Senator Wheeler said. So working with the cabinet, and they did have input on this, this is the product we get.
Representative Callaway.
Yes, just two really brief questions. And first of all, can you explain how that the Georgia subsidies and Kentucky, are they the same, or is Georgia doing something differently than Kentucky? And then the second question is, there's this broad word in there that says obscene when it comes to filmmaking, and just a concern about not just having films made here, but also if we're going to tax subsidize them, how can we ensure that it's promoting the values and the principles that we want promoted here in Kentucky?
Actually, Kentucky's incentive is stronger because it's refundable. In Georgia, there's transferable credits, and the industry has grown to the point where now they're pretty much getting a dollar for a dollar, but when they started, it was about 70 cents on the dollar, and they had to sell their credits. And now there are over 300 studios in Atlanta alone, and it has grown probably because I would say the two things, the size of their airport and marketing.
Representative, as to the obscenity clause, that is one of the things that is not in this legislation but has already been placed in statute, because we don't want two things I think you'll see in the statute: something that reflects bad on the state of Kentucky or obscene materials being produced here. And so, yes, everything has its, I think one of the Supreme Court justices is, you know it when you'll see it. But that's something we wanted to do to make sure earlier on when the incentives were first discussed. But I can tell you, talking with individuals who are in the industry, I just recently had a discussion with a Mrs. Atkins from Menifee County who, after this was passed out of the Senate, talked about how this will help them do wholesome home-based filming, as well as I've discussed with Jess Carell and others who want to try to do that networking of films in the state of Kentucky, better known as kind of Hallmark-style films. And so you can't really define it, but you want to make sure it's not there, but you also want to encourage the other styles of filmmaking.
Just a brief statement, Philip. Yeah, so you brought up Justified, interesting story. Nick Searcy, that played in that as the U.S. Marshal, has moved into my district. He now lives in Cloverport, Kentucky. And we actually had this discussion Saturday night about, just promoting the principles and not to infringe on free speech or anything else. But as we invest, if we're investing in it, just making sure that we're promoting that, because we've got decades now out of California that's not really any substantive content at all that we want our kids feeding on. So,
Representative Cole Carney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for presenting. I had a quick question about the economic impact of this. So we're providing tax incentives for companies to come here, production companies, studios, and use our Commonwealth and for filming locations, things like that. What I wanted to understand was, do you know, or can you give us kind of an estimate of the actual economic impact locally? So we're giving, sort of out-of-state companies incentives. What is the local impact in terms of growing workforce, growing small businesses, or ancillary benefits like that?
That's an excellent question, Representative Kulkarni, and I guess I can share this with you afterwards. But the University of Louisville actually did a study on this a couple of years ago, and based on their findings, the Kentucky film, motion picture, and recording industry generated about $200 million in revenue in 2022, which they estimated helped other businesses earn approximately $128 million. And as a result of that, approximately $27 million was paid in federal, state, and local taxes. So, and that was not even completely exhausting the credits that we have available. So, our projections would be that if we can really take this to the next level, so to speak, that we could expand on that tremendously. And again, I think it goes back a little bit to exposure, to follow up on a question from Representative Lockett. I mean, if you go, for example, to the Georgia Film Office, I mean, they've got a website that's got, all the bells and whistles. If you're looking for a cover bridge, you can do a search. It'll show you different places. If you're looking for a main street, it'll pop up 100 towns in Georgia till you find what you want. And this is no reflection on the Cabinet for Economic Development, but if you look for the Kentucky Film Office, I think they've got a room in the Transportation Cabinet and an email address and a phone number that apparently is not answered that often, according to people that I've spoken to in the industry. So, one of the things that's specifically charged in the bill is the creation of a similar website for Georgia, to really show the world, what Kentucky looks like, what's available to them, and to essentially allow this executive director to have a demonstrable, product that he can take to the various festivals and to industry leaders to take essentially Kentucky to the world.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
Representative Kulkarni, the other thing that I would say, the way this is funded is taking up to $500,000 from the transient room tax. They generate $21.5 million a year. They got a $12.5 million carry forward, but they were very much for this and endorsing, because they believe, and I'm older than most, that you will get Philadelphia Stairs Rocky style moments out of this, that people will visit because of it. And that's not in the U of L study, which, working with the group, asked to commission, that they commission. That doesn't even take into consideration those types of things. And if you really want to get old, talk about Galway and Ireland and a John Wayne statue that people actually go there to look at because they filmed an old movie called The Quiet Man there.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for presenting today. Excuse me. I just had a question about the total cap on the tax incentives, and I know that's not being changed in this bill, but I'm just curious, running back, there were a few years there was a total available of $100 million a year and from 2018 to 2021, and then it went to a non-refundable, and then the last year was a total cap on $25 million and refundable tax credits. I was just kind of curious, like last year, do you know, was all 25 claimed? Is that too low? I just wonder, I'm just kind of curious over the last few years why that was changed so often.
Here's a couple of things that I can tell you, Representative, if I can, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. $75 million was put there because there really wasn't a promotion of the incentives, even though good. And there's a couple of things by this commission being able to focus on it. There's two different things. There's authorized versus used. The reality is I think last year there was around $60-some million authorized, but only about half of that was used. Within the incentive statute, you have to start production, I believe, 6 months after the award or they lapse. So there really wasn't a following of that. So we're not really getting close to the cap, but on the one change, it really didn't work to have that one change on that last $25 million at the end of the fiscal year, so it backs up to April 1 of the current fiscal year. And so we hope that because of a focused commission and an executive director, these things will be monitored to know exactly what is still available on the cap. Because, and again, I think Secretary Noel and group have done a great job. This is just not the area for which they looked at, nor did they focus on.
Yeah, thank you.
Any member have any other questions? One more question. Briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a way, and I don't see it in the bill, but is there a way after to get a report kind of on this, the progress and kind of what it's done and economic impact and those sorts of things?
Not an issue. That should be done. We should monitor and watch this to make sure that any type of incentive we do, or to other questions that we are being held in an appropriate light, that from us being a policy-making body should always be monitoring to make sure the policies we pass are implemented in a way we would want them to be executed on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion on the bill.
We already have a motion and a second. Yes, sir. All right. You're going to second again. All right. We do have, thank you all. We do have someone who has signed up to speak, Mr. Andrew McNeil. If you come to the table. Mike. There we go. All right.
My name is Andrew McNeil. I'm with the Kentucky Forum on Rights, Economics, and Education. I'm the president. We are a free market, state-based think tank. If I may begin, I'd like to answer a couple of the questions that were posed. First, this question of what the definition of obscene means. The prohibition of obscene basically would only prohibit pornography. As a matter of fact, the definition of obscene is found in the state's pornography statutes. You'll see that it's referenced in the current program. I think that it's KRS 531.010, thereabouts. Don't quote me on that. But anything that is hard R, based upon nudity or excessive violence, can qualify, and does qualify, for these subsidies for the film industry. Only pornography is prohibited. Second point, on the question between the difference between Georgia's program and the state's program, Kentucky's program, and it goes to this question of the cap. Georgia doesn't have a cap. They're currently providing $1 billion in subsidies to that industry. So it's naive to suggest that with our program that we are going to mimic what has happened in Georgia, that we're going to see this tremendous investment of studio infrastructure within the state, given that we do appropriately have a cap and Georgia does not. Now watch out, because that's what they're going to come back for next, is raising the cap or eliminating the cap. because that's the only way that you get to Georgia is passing out $1 billion a year. Okay, so there was a film that was made recently, last couple of years, in Frankfurt, here in town. Scenes were shot within a half a mile of this Capitol. It was made by Ethan Hawke. Those of us in Gen X know that name. Starring his daughter. It was named Wildcats. I didn't know the name of the film. I remember it being filmed, didn't know the name of it until I went and looked at it. I think it opened in May 5th, 2024, so just this summer. It premiered in Telluride, opened in Los Angeles and New York, played only there. Its opening weekend gross was $58,000. Its total gross for its full run was $563,000 on a budget of about $6 million. Sounds like a bust, doesn't it? Well, Spectrum News spoke with one of the producers of that program, of that movie, and this producer said the state's, Kentucky's newly improved incentive program was too good to pass up. His team got back about a third of its investment in the film, with nearly $2.9 million in tax incentives from the state. These aren't incentives, these are subsidies. These are handouts. The taxpayers of this state gave this production 5 times more than the ticket sales of it. Think about that. Your constituents probably was responsible for making this film possible. $563,000 in ticket sales, $2.9 million in a check financed by the taxpayers of Kentucky. So how do these incentives work? And I thought about how exactly to explain this, but I found that there was a better explanation for it from Wrigley Media Group in Lexington. Wrigley is very involved with promoting this bill. This is from their website. I'm reading this verbatim. The best thing about Kentucky's entertainment incentive, it's a check right back to you. Not a credit against your taxes, an actual check in hand. Here's another point, Representative Kulkarni. We have a best-in-class crew here at Wrigley, but Lexington is also a great spot for you to bring your own crew. These companies qualify for these incentives whether they hire Kentuckians or not. Yes, Kentuckians will find jobs, some of the services, plumbers, construction, etc. But if we're talking about developing this creative class or this movie industry ecosystem, they're going to qualify and get these subsidies even if they bring their crews from Georgia, from California, from New Mexico. And another interesting thing about Wrigley, as they're marketing this is coming from a private company marketing this. We need this office to market it. This is coming from the company that's going to benefit from it tremendously. Wrigley Media Group will finance the return so you get your refund up front. So Wrigley is going to find out what they qualify for. I suppose, I don't know that we have a representative from Wrigley here. They provide that amount up front, and then it's a transaction between the production company and Wrigley. These are checks. These aren't incentives. Incentives are when you create jobs, you have a tax liability, and you're able to diminish that tax liability because you meet a commitment of a certain number of jobs and a certain number of investment. These are direct, pure subsidies, as economists define them. To the point of the committee sub, and I'm glad that, Mr. Chairman, you brought this up, or it was brought up in the presentation. The original bill exempted the position of executive director from this office, from the state salary schedule. I understand that there's a cap now on that at $225,000, but I want everybody to know that when this person is hired, and they're hired for 200 to 200. The state salary schedule, the rule of thumb, if you work in the executive branch, which I have, is that no state official, except with a very rare exception, should make more than the governor. And it's a matter of fact, that's if you see what they're exempting this position from, if you read it, it basically talks about the governor's compensation. And that's the rule of thumb. No state official should make more than the governor, which I think is about $175,000 thereabouts. But this is giving this office permission to hire this person for $225,000 at the most. Before that, before the committee sub, it was whatever they determined and had the resources to pay. So your vote is giving them the green light to do this. Maybe you believe that it's necessary for this type of position, but when the media reports that this person has been hired, when I communicate via Twitter or in an email blast or in something that this person has been hired for $225,000, permission has been granted according to the language that's within the sub. Chairman, I appreciate the time. We had a film office when I started in Frankfurt. The idea that this is a new idea. I started in Frankfurt in the Fletcher administration in 2004. I worked with Jim Host in the Commerce Cabinet, which is now the Tourism Development Cabinet. We had a film office. We had a film commission. The idea that a new bureaucracy, which kind of cuts against the moment if you think about it, that we're witnessing, is what is critical to building an industry that is transient. The mention of these film productions in these various 80 counties, I challenge you, one film was filmed in my hometown, Maysville. Timothy Chalamet was in it. I could not go to Maysville with any of you and point to any permanent value that was enhanced or created. It's transient. It's not going to be transient in Lexington. It's not going to be transient in Louisville. It's not going to be Georgia. I can promise you that. But in your communities, outside of a little community pride, there's about 3 or 4 weeks, 5, 6 weeks where the restaurants are full, maybe the hotels are full. But even in the Maysville example that I gave you, they stayed in Cincinnati and drove to Maysville every day to shoot and film. Not a whole lot of economic impact there. Last thing, and I'm going to go back to our friend Ethan Hawke. I had a chance while I was in traffic yesterday, slow. I decided to Google Ethan Hawke and Donald Trump. And I would suggest to you all that maybe you want to do that before you vote on this bill. His film pocketed $2.6 million of your constituents' money. This bill is not ready for showtime. There is nothing conservative about subsidizing the film industry. Run that Google search and you'll know what I'm talking about. I say that this bill should be passed over. It should be taken to the interim. Your constituents have a right to know what this bill is, what these subsidies are. Just because it's Senate Bill 1 doesn't mean the House has to pass it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Representative Callaway. Very briefly, Representative Callaway. We're coming up on 30 minutes here.
Yes, sir. Just trying to figure out, it could be for either group, like who, do we know who else is financing these films at all? And is there disclosure for that financing?
The answer to that question is no. So anyone in the United States can go to a website and find out what films the taxpayers of Kentucky are co-financing. So that information is out there. If any of your constituents want to know who they're partnering with, they can't find that information. There's no disclosure requirements for these production companies or studios to have transparent information out there about who they're partnering with. Now, look, I don't want to get into hyperbole, but I think that your constituents should have the opportunity to know whether or not there's a sovereign wealth fund that is behind a production company that is involved with financing these films. But that information isn't available, and I believe that it should be. Excuse me.
Thank you. Any further questions? Would the bill sponsors, if you want to come back up to the table. Mr. McNeil, thank you very much for your presentation. Any further comments before we go to a vote here?
Oh, yes.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, there was a lot of inconsistent statements made and have been released by Mr. McNeil. I'm very well aware of his career in both administrations because I've been here for both of them. But to that end, this is not something that you just write a check. First of all, it's monitored. The system is set up. It's very similar to what we did with SK Blue Over or anybody else. You have to hit certain things. You have to hire people here. If the people come in from out of state and they're paid a wage here, they have to pay income tax here. That's how you generate that type of return and payment back. If they purchase a product here, it has to be verified that it is purchased here. Anything here, you have to generate something to be taxed to get a refund. That's similar across our whole system. As to some statements that were released, I know Mr. McNeil and his foundation said this is only a Louisville and Lexington thing. We don't get any benefit. Well, I can tell you this. I went to Covington, and anybody from the Northern Kentucky area, and having been at the Hotel Covington, will know that they expanded the Hotel Covington partially, I don't want to ever say in totality, because they were getting so many people staying there and they needed extended room stays, so they bought the YMCA next to the Hotel Covington. I can even get into more specifics about the impact there. You walk into the Hotel Covington, Class B movies. I don't think Ethan Hawke is a Class B movie star or person in the theater. But those are the types of things that people who really don't understand what this is about want to say because they have no comprehension of how it works. So I think many of the things there, and I could go step by step to say where this is flawed, but I won't. But it is a flawed analysis of what this bill does and our incentives do.
Any further questions?
Comment.
Seeing none, Sasha, call the roll.
Representative Bowling. Yes. Representative Callaway.
Can I briefly explain my vote?
Very briefly.
I still have some questions, and so I'm going to pass today, and I'll get with you, Senator Wheeler, and talk through them. Thank you.
Representative Duval.
Yes.
Representative Elliott. Representative Gentry.
Yes.
Representative Griffey. Yes. Representative Grossel.
Yes, and please correct my attendance for the record. I had another committee meeting this morning.
Representative Huff.
Yes.
Representative Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative King.
May I comment on my vote, please,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chair? Thank you very much. I vote aye. Mr. McNeil, for the record, I want to say I'm not the slightest bit intimidated by yours or any group of putting out a Twitter blast or an email blast. I make every single vote based on the merits of any bill, and I will continue to do so. I would also like to say, if we're looking for excellent photos for our new website, the Monitor Loop is a good place to start. Thank you. I vote yes, ma'am.
Representative Kulkarni.
Briefly explain, Mr. Chairman.
Very briefly.
I'm going to vote yes, and I want to thank you all for bringing this bill. I wanted to maybe speak with you after to see whether we can, I don't know, strengthen using local workers, local businesses, just making that a priority of the council. If that's possible, I'd be happy to speak to the sponsors. Thank you.
Representative Lawrence. Representative Lehman.
Yes.
Representative Lockett.
Aye.
Representative Payne.
Yes.
Representative Sharp.
Aye.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Yes.
Representative Truitt.
Yes.
Chair Bringskin.
Yes. Senate Bill 1, as amended by House Committee Substitute 1, passes with the expression of opinion that the same should pass.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Mr. Chair, members.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Next up, Senate Bill 76, an act relating to contracts for the improvement of real estate. If you all could please come to the table. Members, we have 25 minutes to get through two bills. If y'all could please state your name for the record.
I'm Greg Elkins, State Senator for the 28th Senate District.
Richard Benson, Executive Vice President of Associated General Contractors of Kentucky.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the committee members for allowing me to present to you this morning. So Senate Bill 76 is a bill that seeks to amend KRS 371.160. That's a statute that was enacted in 1990. Currently, when there's a contract between a property owner and a contractor that exceeds the contract price of $500,000 for a property improvement, project owner can hold out a retainage from the contract amount. Those retained funds are then placed in an escrow account, and this proposed legislation seeks to increase the minimum threshold by which the statute would be triggered from the current minimum of $500,000 to $2 million. And it's simply an effort to make an adjustment based on the construction inflation costs that we've seen over the past
Motion on the
35
bill.
years.
We have a motion by Representative Bowling, second by Representative Duval. Would you like to continue, or?
Never sell once you've sold.
Okay, any questions by members?
But I would entertain questions, yes, sir.
All right, seeing none, Sasha, call the roll.
Representative Bowling. Yes. Representative Callaway.
Yes.
Representative Duval.
Yes.
Representative Elliott. Representative Gentry.
Yes.
Representative Griffey. Representative Grossel.
Yes.
Representative Huff.
Yes.
Representative Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative King.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Kulkarni.
Yes.
Representative Lawrence. Representative Lehman.
Yes.
Representative Lockett.
Aye.
Representative Payne.
Yes.
Representative Sharp.
Aye.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Yes.
Representative Truitt.
Yes.
Chair Branscombe.
Yes. Senate Bill 76 passes with the expression of opinion that same should pass. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Next up, Senate Bill 162, an act relating to unemployment insurance. Good morning. If you could please state your name for the record.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Senator Shelley Funky Fromeyer, Senate District 24, Kenton, Campbell, Bracken, and Pendleton.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. Senate Bill 162 is to address unemployment insurance fraud, and it requires referrals to the local law enforcement. We did simplify the bill. So now you're looking at a one-page bill that's meant to be very straightforward. And in the Section 1, you'll note that if there's any suspected fraud by the unemployment insurance team, then they are required to refer that either to the state or the federal government and lay that out more clearly to the cabinet, to the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety, the appropriate county attorney or Commonwealth's attorney, and if applicable to the United States Department of Justice. And then it outlines more clearly. So it is meant to put a process in place where we didn't have a clear process if there was any suspected fraud. We also recognize that the Unemployment Insurance Office is there to expeditiously serve the unemployment, not to review fraud. But this establishes a pathway to address any fraudulent concerns and actually put some accountability. Ultimately, the goal and the objective is to deter future fraud attempts, to protect the program's integrity. These dollars need to be there when people need them. And it does ensure that the funds go to the legitimate claimants. It's really to try to perhaps restore, maintain public trust in the unemployment system. And it, of course, demonstrates a commitment to accountability.
We have a motion and a second. Representative Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator. I do have a question towards, I guess, paragraphs 3 and 4, where if an employer contractor, I'm concerned that if they're terminated and they end up not being guilty, I mean, would the state or the unemployment office, be liable for damages in that case? I'm just worried that there doesn't seem to be a lot of due process in that area.
So in fact, the due process is still up to the employer to determine whether the employee has met the employer's needs and commitments. But the flip side, one of the reasons that we did eliminate the other portions of the bill is so that there is due process. So to assume that a person did achieve unemployment and then they were found to be fraudulent, they could be receiving unemployment while they're under investigation. If they're found to be fraudulent, then there is already in statute a process to reclaim those dollars that they were paid. I'm not sure, Representative Lehman, if I
maybe-
answered your question.
Can I ask just to clarify that? I guess specifically, if I'm understanding correctly, we're talking about state employees or public employer contractors,
Okay.
and that they're not required. I mean, you don't need to find them guilty before terminating them, if I'm reading that correct. Am I reading that correctly?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Cole Carney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for presenting this bill. I just had a quick question. You mentioned that this creates a mechanism for referral. Is there no mechanism whatsoever right now beyond just a cabinet investigation?
That's correct.
Okay, and a brief follow-up?
Yes.
Is there any impact in terms of the workload or any financial impact on the agencies that would be getting the referrals?
That's a fair question. I really don't know the answer to that, but I can look into that a bit further. I did reach out to our Commonwealth's attorney in Northern Kentucky and felt very supportive of the bill. So I don't know that they anticipate a significant workload. Candidly, our hopes are to deter fraud
Understood. Thank you.
by
Thank
putting
you, Mr. Chair.
a little bit more teeth in a place that really no teeth exist.
Thank you.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
So, is there some sort of definition or something we can look to support what suspect may mean before someone would lose their job? Because I support 100% what this bill's attempting to do. But of course, termination upon this suspecting that fraud has been committed. Is there something that you can point me to sort of look at this before it comes to the floor to assure what the standard will be before someone is terminated?
Interesting. We did dig into this question a little bit further. Megan, do you recall? No. We did dig into that question because it's a standard legal practice where it requires investigation and the opportunity. So we had an issue in our Kentucky unemployment division where some of our own unemployment employees were frauding the system.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I hate to say this on public TV, but they're still working. So even though it was determined that they should be fired, they weren't. So this is trying to address an issue that was only recognized more completely after it was investigated. But these employees really did not miss pay and they didn't lose their job. So it's giving some flexibility so that you can tackle a very serious issue.
Yes, that is oh, I'm sorry.
You got a
Mr.
follow-up
Chair,
question?
Follow-up? Yeah, please.
Briefly, please.
Yes, I understand that. That would be a very serious issue that we definitely need to address. I'd just like to speak with you after the meeting. if that's
Certainly.
okay. Thank you.
And I'm open to some changes. I did take changes requested from others, and we've made some excellent modifications.
Thank you.
Also,
because this is a very serious issue we do need to address, but I just obviously want to address the definition of suspected fraud.
happy to get with you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, are we considered state employees?
We are.
Okay. Reason I'm asking, back in the pandemic days when we had a lot of problems with fraudulent claims and monies that were paid out that probably shouldn't have been. I could go down a long list, as you're aware of. I was one that allegedly was filing for unemployment, which I wasn't, but my information was captured or stolen or whatever the case, and I was told by the department that I was trying to get unemployment. Of course, that turned out being a big scam or whatever, but my name and my personal information was pulled into that. Could I be removed from my job because of something like that, or help me understand this a little bit better before due process is provided?
Yeah, that's a fair question, Representative Gentry. I think in my own experience in human resources, there may be a process to evaluate perhaps, and I don't know how your situation was handled, but to allow a person to be kind of in a holding pattern while it's being explored. But if it is fraud, this creates a system to more completely investigate the fraudulent aspect of what perhaps comes out.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any further questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. Sasha, call the roll.
Representative Bowling.
Yes.
Representative Callaway.
Yes.
Representative Duval.
Yes.
Representative Elliott. Representative Gentry.
No.
Representative Griffey. Yes. Representative Grossel.
Yes.
Representative Huff.
Yes.
Representative Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative King.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Kulkarni.
Briefly explain, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to pass today, Senator. I just wanted to follow up with you on some of the questions and concerns that I had. Thank you.
Representative Lawrence. Representative Lehman.
I'd like to briefly explain my vote
Yes,
as well.
sir.
I'll pass, and not because, I think the intent behind this is fantastic. I've just seen too much in the news about the Labor Cabinet's administration of our unemployment system in Kentucky, and frankly, it's a poor performance. I think we would all agree on that. And I'm really concerned about people being caught in situations where, they're accused falsely, like Representative Gentry mentioned. And I think if there's a way to work on this, that there's due process and we're protecting people's rights. And like I said, I really am concerned about the Labor Cabinet's ability to administer this. Thank you.
Representative Lockett.
Yes.
Representative Payne.
Yes.
Representative Sharp.
Aye.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Explain my vote
Yes, ma'am.
briefly, please. I am going to pass today. As I said, I think this, I appreciate the intent behind the bill and support it. However, I would like to see it strengthened to where we can protect folks against things such as fraudulent claims against them, just as Representative Gentry talked about. Thank you.
Representative Truitt.
Yes.
Chair Brinkman.
Yes. Senate Bill 162 passes with the expression of opinion that same should pass. Congratulations. All right, members, thank you all very much for being here for our